Whiterun, the beating heart of Skyrim, and also more than likely the first major city you'll visit on a playthrough. Situated towards the centre of the province, the city serves as a major commercial hub, at least according to a loading screen, is home to Jorvaska, an ancient mead hall that serves as the Companion's base of operations. It houses the Gildergreen, a sacred tree of some description, and of course has a skyline dominated by Dragonsreach, the palace that serves as residence for the Jarl, Bolgruf the Greater, a man aware of the strategic significance of Whiterun in the ongoing civil war, and though in name only is aligned with the Empire, his concern is chiefly for his people. Therefore he refuses to cast his allegiance in stone and draw battle to his doorstep, rendering the hold neutral, and allowing the Jarl's concerns to sit squarely on safeguarding the people of Whiterun, focusing instead on the alarming return of the dragons and keeping the vile Thalmor away from his city. He's made out to be an invaluable ally to the Dragonborn over the course of the main storyline, and seems to be a decent fellow all round. However, the walls to his home suggest an interesting secret that carries with it some dark implications, of which I've seen many rack their brains over understanding, and in today's video I'm going to throw my mind at it. So sit back, perhaps with a pint of ale, or indeed a brew of some description, and enjoy as we explore the dark secret of Dragonsreach. Now this story is wrapped up in a quest that doesn't take us to Dragonsreach straight away. However, firstly, there are a couple prerequisites to meet. For instance, you need to be level 20, and you also need to have completed the main story quest Dragon Rising, which is activated upon completing the quest Bleak Falls Barrow early on in the main storyline, and entails the Dragonborn's first battle with a dragon just outside the city of Whiterun. So with respect to an organic playthrough, I'd be surprised if you did this quest anywhere north of level 5. But once the requirements have been met, we can return to the city of Whiterun, where we must head not to Dragonsreach, at least not first, but rather the Bannered Mare, a tavern by the small marketplace in Whiterun's Plains district, within which we must converse with the owner, Hulda, and simply ask her to spill the beans on some juicy local gossip.
Been hearing some strange tales of the Jarl's children. Say the one's turning wicked, and the others have an ill-favored look to them. Best to keep clear.
These rumours about the Jarl's children will prompt us with a miscellaneous objective, and that objective will simply be to ask about Bolgruf's strange children. Now that is an odd objective because I wouldn't be awfully receptive to a stranger showing up and asking me about my kids, but that might be because I don't have any kids. Nevertheless, now we must head up to the Cloud District to quiz Bolgruf on his children, because he's almost certainly not going to take that the wrong way. I've heard there's trouble with your children.
Yes, my youngest son. He's a dark child. I don't know what to do with him. He was always a quiet lad, but lately, something has changed. He's become brooding, violent. He won't say a word to me, but I don't know how I upset him. If you could speak to him, draw out the truth, I would be immensely grateful.
This directive from the Jarl will begin the quest The Whispering Door, and if you've got an eye for details in the quest tab of the pause menu, you'll notice this is a Daedra quest, which doesn't bode awfully well for the child. But let's talk about the Jarl's children more widely. He has 3 of them. Dagny, who is spoiled rotten, Frothar, who as far as I can tell is nice enough, if not a bit of an idiot, and Nelkir, whom this quest encircles. Dagny and Frothar have a natural ribbing sibling relationship, one that I can attest to, having grown up with a brother of my own, and as a result they share dialogue in which they argue about nothing important. In passing dialogue with the Dragonborn, Dagny simply complains about the quality of the local sweet rolls, whereas Frothar expresses his childish desires for the civil war to go on long enough that he can grow up and then proceed to fight in it, which is, by the way, the line of dialogue that convinced me that in his youth he's an idiot. But Nelkir certainly stands out, even without a quest marker over his head. Anytime you visited Dragonsreach prior to beginning this quest, he may make the following condescending remark.
Another wanderer, here to lick my father's boots. Good job.
a venomous comment that implies disdain not only for his father for being the Jarl of Whiterun, but also for us simply for existing. His other dialogue would also suggest he doesn't have anything particularly nice to say.
The only grown-ups who talk to me are the kind I don't want talking to me. Have I done something to make you bother me?
You get the point. He's a miserable so-and-so. The Jarl is aware of Nelkir's anger towards him, but doesn't know where it's come from. And though the quest log helps make this answer a bit more obvious than it perhaps needed to be here, let's speak with the child and see what the crack is. Your father said to speak with you.
So, the disgusting pig sent you to bother me. One day, I'll tear his face apart so he can leave me alone. My father doesn't know anything about me. But I know about him, and about the war. More than he might think.
So the child fantasizes about violently killing his dad, which is a less than ideal family dynamic to deal with, especially when, as far as we can tell in our admittedly limited experience, the Jarl hasn't done anything to necessarily warrant such hatred from his own offspring. But fortunately, we can quiz the boy on this.
I know that he still worships Talos. That he hates the Thalmor almost as much as the Stormcloaks do. That he worries about being chased from Whiterun. That I don't have the same mother as my brother and sister.
How do you know these things, child?
The castle was old. Lots of places nobody's been in a long while. Places where you can overhear things, see things. And the Whispering Lady.
Who's the Whispering Lady?
She won't tell me her name. I've gotten good at listening to keyholes. At the door in the basement, I hear her talking to me. I thought I was caught, but she started telling me even more secrets. But I can't open the door.
And where is this door?
In the basement. Trust me, you'll see it. I bet she'll talk to you too. Until next time.
So before we address the alarming elephant in the room being a talking door, Nelkir discloses that his old man still worships Talos and hates the Thalmor, and fears being driven from his home. But the boy hates his father because he is secretly a bastard. Not in the modern general vulgar language sense, but rather the ye olde definition. Nelkir has a different mother to his brother and sister, and he had to learn this via a talking door. So I think it's safe to say that this is kept secret, even and perhaps especially from him, meaning Nelkir's mother was never a part of the Jarl's court and was never Bolgraf's wife. Speaking of, he has 3 spawn hanging around the place, and no wife. I don't intend for this video to become a lesson in how reproduction works, but let's just say it's apparent evidence that there was somebody in Bolgraf's life at one point, but she's gone now. Anyway, we have more obvious questions to answer at the moment. For instance, why is a door talking to this child? To answer that question, we must venture down into the basement and talk with the door ourselves. And as it turns out, this door indeed is a rather talkative one.
At last. I've been waiting for someone more fit to carry out my will. The child is spirited but lacks agency.
Is there someone behind the door?
Regrettably, I cannot reach your plane so directly. But I forgive you for not knowing who I am. Few hear my whispers anymore. I am Mephala, the Lady of Whispers. I tug at the web of connections between mortals. Love, hatred, loyalty, betrayal. The boy was good at sussing out secrets. You, I expect to take a more active role.
What do you want me to do?
First, you must open this door. A piece of my power has been locked away behind it, and even my eyes cannot see past the seals. I'd much rather it be in the hands of an ambitious and talented person, such as yourself.
And how do I open the door?
The whole of Whiterun is ripe with paranoia and tensions. The Jarl's court is ripe to fear the power I hold behind this door. The Jarl trusts few, and they will be his undoing. The Dark Child knows of what I speak. Let him guide your path.
So as it turns out, the Whispering Lady is not a talking door at all, but rather the Daedric Prince Mephala. Or is it Daedric Princess? Honestly, I don't know. Now, the most straightforward explanation of Mephala that I could find is in the Book of Daedra, which states the following. Mephala, whose sphere is obscured to mortals, known by the names Webspinner, Spinner, and Spider, whose only consistent theme seems to be interference in the affairs of mortals for her own amusement. Now, Daedric princes are complex beings, effectively gods the way I understand them, each ruling over their own plane of oblivion that reflects their nature, and very rarely does that nature have much appetite for the morality of mortals. In Mephala's case, her nature is associated with lies, naughty business, murder, secrets, and betrayal. In other words, it's unclear what her intentions are with Nelkir, or indeed us now. But for what it's worth, before we continue, it appears Nelkir's encounter with Mephala was fairly routine. While exploring portions of Dragonsreach he shouldn't have been in, he simply stumbled upon a site relating to Mephala, and she began whispering her secrets to him. A similar encounter with the Prince of Secrets is documented by Cirillo the Deranged in a book called Dark Ruins, found in the Elder Scrolls Online. A game I haven't played awfully intensively over the years, but I am familiar with Google. Anyhow, an interesting passage from that reads, "What did I find at that first shrine to the web spinner that I wandered into by luck and accident? What drove me from my parents' home in search of other Daedric ruins? It was the voice, beautiful and seductive. It whispered to me, told me secrets that I never should have heard. The whispers emanated from the ancient cracked statue. They echoed from the cavern walls. They reverberated through my mind, building in volume and intensity, until they drowned out my own thoughts and memories. They frightened me, these whispers, but they also excited me, and I had to hear more." It appears Nelkir's encounter with Mephala is similar to that of Cirillo the Deranged, albeit under different circumstances and at a different point in life. Perhaps it's not as intense an experience for Nelkir, who, according to Mephala herself, lacks agency, which kind of comes with the territory with being a child, but she regardless told him enough to turn him on his father. As for what she wants from us, well, we'll have to get behind the door to find out, which means we need to ask Nelkir how we can open the door.
I told you, I know everything about the castle. For some reason, that door is special. Only 2 people can open it. Balgroof and Farengar, the court wizard. How you get it from them is up to you. Nobody would notice if Farengar went missing, I promise you.
So we learn 2 people have keys to the door, the Jarl and the court wizard, and sure enough, the whispering door key is in the inventory of both. Whatever is in that tightly locked room, the Jarl and his court mage are aware of it. I find it odd that we can't quiz either on what is in that room, but it isn't exactly unheard of for Skyrim quests to fail to come full circle. It is, however, easy enough to pickpocket either of these characters, though I do find it alarming how callously a child just implied we should kill a man. Is that just his nature, or has he become twisted by the Daedric prince in the basement? So with the key acquired, it's time to unlock the door and see what lies within. On the table we will see a sword named the Ebony Blade, and a book titled Admonition Against Ebony, that reads as follows. To anyone reading this, beware this blade. It is hoped that the only people having access to this room should be the Jarl of Whiterun and his trusted wizard. If anyone else is reading this, please understand the magnitude of your folly. Turn around and never even speak of this room or this blade to anyone. It has corrupted and perverted the desires of great men and women, yet its power is without equal. To kill while your victim smiles at you, Only a Daedra most foul could have concocted such a malevolent and twisted weapon. But it appears that all who wield it end up with the crazed eyes of those wild men who roam the hills chattering with rabbits. It is not to be trifled with. Not even the hottest fires of the Skyforge could melt it. Indeed, the coals themselves seemed to cool when it was placed within. We cannot destroy it, and we would not have it fall into the hands of our enemies, so we keep it hidden, dark and deep within Dragonsreach, never to be used. Woe be to any who choose to take it. Fair enough, sounds like fun.
Excellent work. Now, I trust you're sharp enough to see that the sword doesn't match the description of the Ebony Blade you may know. It has languished too long outside the winds of alliance and betrayal. To return to its past glory, it must first drink the blood of deceit. Your world is admirably steeped in lies and inclinations. My blade is a darling leech that feeds on deceptions and nourishes its master. Seek out those closest to you. The final pluck of their misguided heartstrings will accompany my blade in a song of your grandeur.
And that concludes the quest, the Whispering Door. And now we're in possession of the two-handed sword known as the Ebony Blade. It absorbs the life essence of your foes and is strengthened by the blood of deceit. What this means is, if you kill your friends with it, or at least what the game classifies as your friends, the blade will increase in power. In other words, in order to restore the Ebony Blade to its former twisted glory, the wielder must resort to treachery. Rather disappointingly, neither the Jarl nor Farengar have any dialogue regarding you possessing the Ebony Blade, even if you wield it right in front of them. But in fairness, their names aren't actually mentioned in this book. Who's to say this wasn't written by a predecessor? Well, thanks to another game, in this instance a mobile one known as The Elder Scrolls Blades, that game's protagonist, known as the Warrior, comes across the Ebony Blade during their journey. And that game is set during the 180th year of the Fourth Era. This means it's highly likely the Ebony Blade found its way to Dragonsreach at some point after this. And it's not hard to believe that despite his golden locks, Balgruuf has been the Jarl of Whiterun for some time. So in absence of confirmation with respect to good storytelling, I think there's a very high chance the Jarl in question is indeed the sitting Jarl. And with that we can bring ourselves to the most pressing question of the day. What was Balgruuf's experience with this Daedric artifact? The notebook warning us not to take the sword implies an understanding of the weapon's corrupting nature, but also that the Jarl actively attempted to destroy it, citing that not even the fires of the Skyforge could melt it. In fact, if anything, it started cooling the coals, effectively draining the life force of this legendary forge. You don't attempt to destroy something so completely and unnecessarily unless you hold sheer contempt for it. Well, it's either that or you experience the evil this thing is capable of firsthand, and have concluded that no mortal is fit to even look at it, let alone wield it. And once again, if nothing else, for the sake of storytelling, I'd imagine there's an element of truth to both explanations. The question is, of course, whose actions did he observe? Somebody else's, or his own? He certainly has his secrets, otherwise Mephala wouldn't be telling his son about them. You see, she may be referred to as a Daedric Prince of Lies and a million other labels, but it's clear she's invested in obscure and undisclosed knowledge. This doesn't mean she herself necessarily lies. However, she exposes lies to those whom would never have uncovered the truth any other way. And those truths aren't without reason or purpose, rather highlighting the consequences to actions, influencing outcomes perhaps just to see what the outcome is. So perhaps she's simply revealing the lies to the light too, disclosing to Nelkir just enough knowledge to turn him on his father. Was her plan to eventually turn Nelkir on his father and kill him, retrieving the key and then unlocking the door and releasing the blade back on the world? Well, you may have noticed the Whispering Door quest was quite short and linear with respect to its choices. You could either do the quest, retrieving the Ebony Blade, or simply not do that. But it does appear as if once upon a time the quest was intended to be a little bit more expansive and a bit more disturbing, with Mephal's influence inevitably swaying Balgruuf's other children as well. Apparently this would escalate to the children working together to murder the Jarl. This would imply the revelation of knowledge so damning that it could turn all of Balgruuf's children against him. As it's not my belief that Mephala herself lies, at least not as a rule. She simply tugs at the web of connections between mortals. So the question becomes squarely, what shameful past is the Jarl attempting to bury that she sees fit to unravel? And considering the admonition against Ebony found with the blade, could this dark secret relate back to her? Or at least simply the blade? After all, the admonition states that it has corrupted and perverted the desires of great men and women, and that it appears that all who wield it end up with the crazed eyes of those wild men who roam the hills, chattering with rabbits. So who did Balgruuf see corrupted by it? Did he himself once upon a time wield the blade and commit unspeakable acts? Or did he observe that from somebody else? Somebody else he and Farengar had to stop? If this was the case, it has to be somebody the Jarl would want to believe was once upon a time good. For instance, perhaps the absent mother of 2 of his 3 children. She's never mentioned at all in the game. But if 2 of the 3 kids have the same mother, then there must have been a constant motherly presence at some point. So Balgruuf's apparent wife is nowhere to be seen nor heard, and in the basement of Dragonsreach there just so happens to be a sword that grows in power upon betraying those closest to you. And the Jarl and the Court Wizard don't just not desire to use it, they also fear the prospect that it could fall into enemy hands, or indeed anyone's. Could his wife have been the previous wielder, or perhaps could he have become corrupted by the blade himself? Both theories are admittedly a huge mental leap, but if there was once upon a time intent for the Whispering Door quest to entail Mephala's whispers turning all of the Jarl's children against him, what secret is he carrying? And why daren't he mention his wife? There is certainly a story here, and I'm not necessarily certain I'm barking up the right tree. After all, what could possibly sober the Jarl up from his obsession with the blade, if this was true? But then it occurred to me, what if the blade doesn't actually corrupt at all? It has nice perks, and it's quite a useful, powerful two-handed weapon that makes short work of your friends and foes alike. But as far as we possess it in gameplay, it doesn't actually force us to betray our friends. We choose to do that. We choose to give in to the blade. It and Mephala both may guide us towards making these dark decisions, but ultimately, the decision is still ours. So perhaps the corruption of the Ebony Blade is far more self-imposed than mortals would happily choose to believe. And that's where, in my research, a passage from the Codex Sentia, the guidebook that accompanied the Elder Scrolls Arena, occurred to me. The Ebony Blade, sometimes called the Vampire or the Leech, resembles an ebony katana, but its power is very dark indeed. Every time the Ebony Blade strikes an opponent, part of the damage inflicted flows into the wielder as raw power. The blade itself may not be any more evil than those who have used it, but at some point in its long existence, a charm was cast on it so it would not remain with one bladesman. The wizard who cast this charm sought to save the souls of any too infatuated by the blade, and perhaps he was right. The most relevant point of which being the suggestion that the Ebony Blade may be no more evil than those who utilize it. As infatuating and intoxicating as the blade's power may be, the suggestion is that it's still but a sword. It doesn't absolve the user of the responsibility of their actions while they were in the possession of the sword. It simply rewards them with raw power for carrying out dishonourable betrayals. Of course, every time you strike down an ally with the sword, Mephala does continue to speak.
Excellent work, child.
So while one could argue the user to have been manipulated and corrupted, it's tricky to say by whom or what. And those few unlucky enough to have to grapple with this unique moral situation may very well want to believe that the blade has a corrupting power on its wielder, as that, as incomprehensible as it may be, is an easier pill to swallow than accepting the blade simply exemplifies your own nature. It's worth mentioning in Skyrim this quest is cut short because it was initially planned to be much longer. But acquiring the Ebony Blade in the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion requires you to do some pretty awful things before you're even in possession of the sword. Mephala tasks the hero of Kvatch with starting a feud between two prominent families in the village of Bleaker's Way, and this is done by murdering the leaders of both families and planting evidence on each implicating the other, and as a result the settlement descended into conflict and the two families would fight until there was only one survivor. As a result of this, Mephala rewards the hero of Kvatch with the Ebony Blade. So how awful can the sword truly be if the person who wields it was awful before they even picked it up? So that brings us to the theory that gets about a bit regarding Bolgruf. Nelkir reveals to us that he doesn't share the same mother as his brother and sister, and considering they're all children of similar size, courtesy of the limitations of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, I think it's fair to say that for continuity's sake, their age difference isn't that great, meaning that Balgruf's wife was probably still kicking when Nelkir was conceived, if not born. Well, he wouldn't be unfaithful to his poor wife, would he? Well, we do have dialogue that would suggest that Balgruf likes to get about and socialise, albeit at the behest of his housecarl Irileth.
Did you slip out again last night for a drink at the Bannered Mare?
Heard about that, did you? Yes, I went out for a pint or two. What of it?
These secret visits to the tavern will make you an easy target for an enemy assassin. You should have told me first.
Damn it, woman, I'm the Jarl of Whiterun. I won't apologize for talking to my people. You can't protect me every moment of the day.
That might be so, but it will never stop me from trying.
So what if during one of these sneaky outings, Balgruf had, let's just say, passing relations with another woman while married to his wife, and upon discovering that he had a son with this woman, brought him to Dragonsreach and attempted to pass him off as legitimate? After all, this is the kind of scandal that Mephala exists for. And let's just say his wife wasn't awfully eager to play a role in the ruse. Not that I'm awfully sure how they'd play it off, but Elder Scrolls logic, I guess. This would give the Jarl a reason to remove his wife from the picture, in a very simple, almost comic book villain sense anyway. Now, while it's unclear how the Jarl came into the possession of the Ebony Blade, let's assume for the moment that that happened around the same time as this scandal, if you want to call it that. And the combination of Mephala's influence and his short temper got the better of him, and for some reason he killed his wife with the Ebony Blade. Then, disgusted by the horror he'd inflicted and the twisted nature of the Ebony Blade, cast it into the Skyforge in an attempt to destroy it, only to discover that it couldn't be destroyed. Not willing to let somebody take it away and run the risk of it being out there somewhere, he locked it away in Dragonsreach, where only he and the court wizard, who both had cause to understand the blade's function, would even know of its presence. This would explain why nobody ever mentions the Jarl's wife, as even that would be cause to invoke the man's dark side, so to speak. But more importantly, rather than blaming himself for his responsibility and culpability in his wife's passing, he opted to blame the sword's corrupting nature, which appears to be a topic of debate to some degree within the Elder Scrolls lore. And though this theory suggests events that couldn't possibly be known to us for certain, events not dissimilar would explain why Mephala's whispering of secrets to the children in the original version of the Whispering Door quest could have resulted in all three of Balgruf's children turning on him and killing him. The oldest two because he'd killed their mother, and the youngest because he'd lied about his true parentage, though it's also possible he's been adopted. That said, he specifies that he doesn't share a mother with his brother and sister, but he doesn't doubt that his father is his father, so I doubt that. Also, I've seen the creation kit specifies Nelkir to be Jarl Balgruf's brother in the game files, which I think would be far more interesting in a game that wasn't as notoriously sloppily designed as, say, Skyrim, The theory certainly makes Dragonsreach a thematically appropriate setting for Mephala, the Daedric prince of murders, lies, deception, sex and secrets, as such a theory encompasses all of these things into a sordid scandal that she may indeed have created and is continuing to observe, and, where appropriate, influence. Indeed, the connection to Mephala within Dragonsreach runs steeper still, because according to the Primer official game guide for the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, Balgruuf's housecarl Irileth has an interesting history of her own, and her entry reads, Irileth is unusual for a housecarl. She's female, a dark elf, and doesn't fit the role of a muscle-bound protector, but that doesn't make her any less effective. Irileth is actually a skilled assassin, trained in Morrowind by the Morag Tong. Interestingly, the Morag Tong are a shrouded guild of assassins headquartered in Morrowind, whose origins, as shrouded in myth as they are believed to be heavily linked to the Daedric prince Mephala. And I acknowledge that I'm not honouring that train of thought with much justice, but to cut a long story short, it is a curious coincidence. The Jarl of Whiterun is in possession of the Ebony Blade, and he has a housecarl that once upon a time belonged to a guild that worships Mephala. I'd say it's interesting, but I couldn't really factor its relevance beyond that. It's worth mentioning though. Nevertheless, she is constantly paranoid about the prospect of attempts on the Jarl's life.
I am charged with protecting the Jarl from any and all threats. Powerful men have many enemies, more so in times of strife, so you can imagine the dangers. Oh yes, there have been attempts on the Jarl's life. More than one would-be assassin has met his end at the tip of my blade. Dragons, Stormcloak assassins, ambitious and unscrupulous nobles. Sometimes I think his own children want him dead. And those are just the physical threats. Assaults on his sanity are another matter entirely. Every day he deals with obsequious functionaries and incompetent bureaucrats. Sadly, I'm not allowed to eliminate them. Well, not yet, anyway.
Perhaps she knows something we don't with regards to the Jarl's security, but I do reckon it's in her job description to be in tune with the obvious that being the Jarl of Whiterun comes with enemies. That didn't stop me from lobbing an arrow into his head from the rafters, and while I was at it, it's their own fault for having a ceiling this ridiculously high. Just put floors here, you fools. To conclude today's video, Mephala clearly has a strong presence within Dragonsreach, and Dragonsreach itself certainly does have a dark secret, whether that be Mephala's influence over Nelkir and perhaps even, if left unchecked, the other children of Balgruuf, or that Balgruuf may have murdered his wife with the Ebony Blade and hid it away upon realising it couldn't be destroyed. I personally don't know what to believe with regards to this one. But what I do like is that it forced me to re-evaluate a character that I thought was a rather cool dude. I do like when mysteries are present and provide that. That said, I'm not entirely convinced I've done this topic the true justice it's owed, but that's a mixture of my own personal imposter syndrome, to which there is no cure besides from simply getting over myself, and the tough nut to crack that is the Elder Scrolls lore, in which nothing is quite as simple as it first seems, and my knowledge of it is infantile compared to what making these videos sometimes asks of me. So feel free to correct me in the comments on any errors I've made. I promise I won't take it too personally. After all, making these videos is the only way I know how to expand my knowledge on this universe that I've enjoyed pouring so many hours into over the years. So if anything, corrections or alternate interpretations are welcomed. But look, thank you all for watching this video. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. It would be massively appreciated. Maybe check out a couple of my social media accounts where I post barely anything related to making YouTube videos, but I do have a dog and post esoteric ramblings every once in a while, so if that's something you're interested in, definitely check it out. And with any luck, I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point, but until next time, please take care and goodbye.